Hello and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Maria Espona with ArgIQ, and we are partnering with CDO Magazine, MIT CDO, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers for a series of interviews. Today, we have the pleasure of talking with Dr. Rayid Ghani from the Carnegie Mellon Institute. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you. Thanks.
And another field that is growing also is public interest technology. Have you seen the role of the public interest technology evolve over the past few years, both formally and informally?
Yeah, I mean, I think over the past few years, there has been more awareness of the need for it. I think what I sort of, I'd say 5-10 years ago, there were sort of three, at least in my mind, there were three challenges, right? A lot of the public interest organizations, governments, nonprofit, they didn't know what was possible, what could be done with these technologies. They also didn't have people who either knew what had to be done or what could be done. They didn't have the people to do it. And then if they knew what could be done, they had the people to do it. They didn't have the tools to do it. They would start from scratch. Right? So if you think about a bank that has to figure out, whether to give somebody a loan or to figure out, which customers are likely to leave, they don't start from scratch. They take a tool, a churn prediction tool, for example, and then they use it. They modify it for their needs. If a large, phone company wants to do the same thing, they don't start from scratch. They buy a tool and then they configure it. If a nonprofit wants to figure out, which health, let's say, patients are not going to come back for the next appointment, and they need to do outreach to make sure they do. It's similar technical problem, very different policy problem, but they start from scratch because there are no tools designed for their needs. So what we sort of saw was lack of understanding of what could be done, lack of people who knew what to do, and lack of tools that are customized for the needs of public interest technology. And what we've seen over the last few years is those three things changing. Right? There is a much better awareness of what these technologies can do. There is better talent pool now of students and practitioners who are able to do them. And there is the third piece is still not as mature, right? The presence of tools, toolkits that are designed for the needs of these organizations, for the needs of public interest technology. So I think we still have work to do in all of these areas, but things are much better. Now, what's happened over the last 5 years is a lot of organizations have started doing pilots. And I think at this point, we have a decent idea of what can be done. What's sort of lacking is turning those pilots into deployed systems. That hasn't happened yet, and it's just because it takes more time to prove that those pilots are effective, to measure their impact, to then build a business case for deployment, because they're going to cost more. They need new people to develop and build and maintain, and they have to be better enough. There has to be evidence that they're better enough that it's worth adding those extra resources. So I think we're in a much better shape at understanding the possibilities, developing some talent, and I think in doing a lot of proof of concepts and pilots across different city and state and federal agencies and nonprofits. I think now the goal is like, how do we scale? How do we actually deploy these systems? How do we train people to maintain them and monitor them? And how do we turn them into kind of more robust tools that other organizations can start from there as opposed to starting from scratch?
It's not easy. Working with the public sector, it always takes longer than with the private one, but it's good that now they are starting to use data science in their projects and to start with these pilots and to see how they can improve their performance because of the use of the data. And I think it's a good thing. We have something bright in the future, at least in this regard.
That's the hope, yeah.
Yeah. So, and considering I have only 2 more questions for you, and both of them are related to COVID and the experience that we're supposed to have learned because of it. And one thing is that through COVID, the government realized the importance of private-public partnership, both for supply chains, but also for data sharing and management. What do you think that we have learned this and we can learn for sure and we can stick in this position, or it's like a temporary learning?
I think data sharing is tricky for governments, right? It's often because they have a responsibility. The data they have is not their data, right? It's the public's data. Now, it's very, very often the data is very sensitive, and the people with data is don't, they shouldn't be just sharing it. So at the same time, there's expectation because the public's data, we should have some transparency in what we have and what we're doing with it, and can it be used for other things to benefit the public. But I think that tension of I want to protect the privacy and the confidentiality of the people while sort of promoting transparency and good responsible use of it. There is that tension, I think, is ideally that's a conversation we want to have more publicly, more openly, not a handful of tech people having that conversation, but we're really the public having that conversation. And so the question is, how do we create venues for communities to have those conversations? I don't think it's a one big conversation, right? Each community can kind of have a conversation. So, do we want, what data is being collected about us by our governments? What should be done to it? What should not be done? What should be the rules around? And I don't think we do that. I think right now those things happen in some cases. I don't think they happen very well. I don't think we have a good process for engaging and including the community in those conversations. We often decide for them. And so I think we might even be transparent in how we do it, except transparent doesn't mean inclusive.
Yeah.
I have posted how I do things here. Anybody who goes to the website can see what I do with this data. If you just click on the terms of use, you can read what we do with the data. Yeah, good luck. If you sort of look at informed consent that exists, how does it translate into the digital world? Because informed consent wasn't designed for the digital world, right? It's if you click once and you say yes, can that be used now forever, or do you need to remind somebody every time data being used? So I think one of the things, and then something we're exploring actually is part of one of the grants we got from the Public Interest Technology University Network has been, how do we include community members in these types of conversations? How do we train academia to work effectively with the communities that they're working to help? And designing materials to sort of train people in academia, researchers, faculty, staff, students, on how to be better collaborators with the communities that we're designing our systems with and for. But I think that's, again, we're very early on in that space where there's a lot of good work that's going on, but I think, and we need a lot more. I think, anytime we're doing something like this, we need to kind of make sure that the community that's being affected is part of the design process. We don't have great sort of ways that we figured out how to do it well, and that needs to happen.
Finally, I would like to share a thought with you and to know your opinion. But when we, after this time that we spent together talking about data and your perspective in several aspects, what I see is that we always came back to some topics, like your last thought includes also an ethical behavior. And we talk a lot about how the management will work together or interact more with the data experts and this kind of thing. So it's like we are always coming back to the same topics. And I would like to know what you think, if in the future we will be able to achieve this interaction and it's futurology. We can do it because it's something that worked quite well during the COVID. But as you said, there are some issues that must be solved, like the informed consent and all these cookies that arrive to your computer all the time. This should change in order to have more transparency and other qualities in the data, but not easy, right?
No, and it's not easy for good reason, right? A company can just sort of make business decisions that improve their profits or their, or shareholder value, right? I think these things are more difficult because I think for a lot of governments, that it's not, if a company does something bad, the customers will leave, right? So there's a different, whereas a lot of, if a government does something bad, some of the people affected don't have a voice and don't know how to use that voice. And so I think we have to be a little bit more careful in, if nobody complains, is that, if nobody leaves you as a customer, that's not a good signal for governments. And so you can't always do things by, let's do a poll and see what people think, because are people being given enough information to make an informed opinion and to take an informed action? Have you done the work necessary to inform the people well? Have you done the work to understand what their needs are, what their values, what their opinions are, and then maybe and so I think that's why it's not easy and it's slower, but I think it's a good reason that it needs to be a little bit slower, because we can't, we're again making important decisions, and that's the trade-off, right? So do I think it'll ever be done? I think it'll always be a work in progress, right? I think it's at the same time, I think if we do these things and show people the value, look, this data is not, we collected as little data as possible as we needed to do this very specific thing that helped us better deliver this service for you and improve these things for you. I think if we sort of created these systems with the community, and then we were open about how it's being used and how it's helping people and giving people a role in the design of these systems, it hopefully leads to more trust in the system. It hopefully leads to teams that include more people from the community, that reflect the community better, and then that cycle is sort of gets us to better outcomes for people. So it is a longer term goal. I don't think it's a quick thing, and I think that's why these things need to kind of continue for a while.
Yeah, but at least we are discussing the topic, and it's the first point. When you start to talk about it, it's the start. You start the motion. Everything starts to move around. It's good. So thank you so much, Rayid, for this interview. I really enjoyed. I learned even a lot. So thank you very much.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks for the conversation.
Thank you.